Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim.
And I'm Tia.
And this feels so good being back. So we've had
Yay.
a little 2-week hiatus. Tia was away traveling to Hawaii and
Yes.
Minnesota. So she's nice and fresh and relaxed, but it's been a while since we recorded. So
Couple
this
weeks.
feels so good to be back. Even though our podcasts have still been coming out because we have them pre-recorded, but you and I haven't been back in our studios, air quotes.
I love that. Our really fancy studios.
Our professional studios, not, but okay. So anyway, I'm going to read today's quote and then explain what we're going to chat about today. So the quote is, "You suffer when your expectations differ from your reality." And that's from Dr. Shefali Tsabary. So the reason that we chose this one is because I will say that today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So today is August 24th and today's my birthday. And I woke up this morning and the first person that I saw was my husband. And I was just, "Hey, how are you? Good morning." We're chit-chatting back and forth. And I'm thinking, okay, no happy birthday. And I'm thinking, well, okay, he's, looking at the newspaper, whatever, he's distracted. A little bit of time goes by, still nothing. Okay, then about 20 minutes later, my son comes downstairs. Nothing, no happy birthday.
Crickets.
And right. Oh my God. And so a little bit of time goes by. I'm like, okay, maybe it hasn't hit him yet. He needs a few minutes. 10, 15, 20 minutes goes by, nothing. He leaves for work. "See you later, Mom." Okay. Surely my daughter is going to remember. And so she comes downstairs. Nothing. No happy birthday. I'm like, okay, so now I'm starting to really check in with what's going on inside me. And I'm watching my feelings come up of this disappointment, right? I'm just feeling like, wow, really disappointed. Noticing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wisdom taps in and I know what I've learned from Dr. Shefali and other wisdom teachers all about expectations,
right?
And don't attach to expectations. Don't have them, because as this says, you suffer when you have an expectation and it differs from your reality.
Yes.
I had an expectation that I was going to wake up and, my family was going to remember that it was my birthday. The reality was they didn't. So I'm like, okay, then I remember Dr. Shefali saying, you kind of just laugh at things. So I'm like, all right, let's laugh at it, watching myself feel disappointed and then trying to let go. But the feeling kept coming back. Like I kept feeling that little pang of disappointment. Yep. So then I'm like, all right, knowing what I know and what we talk about on our podcast and what, we knowing what I know.
Yep.
I cannot bypass my feelings.
So important.
So I have to tap in and be with my feelings. Sorry, people, about the background noise, the sign. I don't know if you heard it. It is what it is. So I have to feel my feelings of disappointment, because if I don't, one, I'm not being authentic. I'm pushing it down, pushing it away. And if I push them away, what happens when we push our feelings down and push away? They just keep coming back. Right. And I could find myself maybe in an hour later wanting to eat or wanting to do something because I want to avoid those feelings.
Right.
And I'm not feeling them. They don't go away. So this is feeling your feelings. And this is not this is the opposite of bypassing.
Exactly.
So let's talk about these expectations, right?
Yeah. And so before we hit record, you want to bring in the expectations around birthdays, what you grew up with?
Yes.
Because that's a
yes,
piece of the pattern and the
yes,
story and the feelings you're having is the recreation
yes,
as well.
exactly. So thank you for reminding me about that. So when I was growing up, my mom had an expectation that not just for herself, but she also made a really, really big deal about everybody's birthdays. I'm sorry. Like when it was mine, my sister's, she would really make a big deal and really go all out. But in turn, she also then expected that when it was her birthday or when it was Mother's Day or, something like that, that we would all make a really big fuss
Right.
about her birthday, and that we somehow would be able to make her feel really special. Like that would make her feel worthy or special because we were showing her all this love, this attention, and showering her with adoration on her birthday.
Right.
Right. So she had that expectation, and she's looking from the outside to fill her on the inside.
Right.
So that's even something like that I was watching for myself. And is this like an old pattern, an old conditioning coming up as well? So being able to put that space, it's not an either or, right? We said this, it's not either or, it's an and like, I know what I know, and I have the wisdom about expectations. I know that I need to detach from expectations and not be dependent on others to make me feel a certain way.
Right.
And my heart felt disappointed.
Right.
My heart felt sad.
Right.
So just feeling that. So it's taking the heart and the mind and working with the two. We always talk about mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
And so that's what the process is being able to balance the two, integrate the two, the mind and the heart. And I also shared with you how, like, okay, so I want to go see this band, this group tonight, play at the park. And so I asked my son and my daughter, thinking in the back of, I will be honest and say, in the way that my mother would, the thought was there, oh, it's my birthday, don't you want to come? But I didn't, like, don't you want to come with me?
Right.
That was
you should do this for me.
You should. That was an old, like, it was there, but I didn't say it. So there's where the power of the pause comes in, right? It's when you start to do the work and you learn how to pause and you become conscious of your patterns, of your conditioning, of your thoughts. I now was able to pause and not say that. Had I not done this work, I would have repeated the pattern that my mother did. And I would have said something like, really? Are you serious? It's my birthday. You're not going to come with me. You're going to make me go alone. Like something with that kind of guilt and that tone, and project that on them.
Right.
Whereas what I did choose is they don't have to go, no strings attached. If they don't want to go listen to the band, I'm going to go anyway, because that's what I want to do. That's what I will enjoy doing, is going and listening to the music. Right. So I'm going to go. And there I broke the generational cycle of guilting and expecting my kids to fulfill something within me, or that because they are my kids, they have to go with me. And because it's my birthday, they have to go with me. Who says?
Right. But we've been conditioned for generations that is, and culture, right?
Culture too. Yeah.
That's what happens. Because if you love and respect your mother, you do everything and make her feel blah, blah, blah. But the reality is they can't do that anyway. Only we can do that ourselves.
That's right.
They can add to it, should they choose to.
Icing on the cake.
Exactly. But if it's coming from a place of guilt, then it's not true anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, and of course there's times we do things that we don't necessarily want to do, or because we know it will make the other person, bring them joy. But we choose to do that. We're not guilted into that. And so many of us have been guilted into it over the years. And that's expectations that we put on others.
Yeah. And you know what? That's interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking of a self-imposed expectation that I put on myself. and it just happened this weekend when I was in Florida. So I went down to see my dad for his birthday.
Right.
And I felt myself, because I live in New York and my sister lives in Florida, and she's the one who has more of the responsibility of seeing my dad and being, she lives down there, that, you know, I had the tape running through my head that I'm only down here for 2 days. I should be at his house from the time he wakes up until the time he goes to bed. Whereas like that wasn't really best for me, because I was getting tired. There were a couple times where I let myself get too hungry. And, you know, so I was putting like a little bit of myself aside. But it wasn't even that my dad because he wouldn't have known if I was there for 2 hours or 6 hours, but it was more my sister. I was worried that my sister would think that that she would have an expectation of me staying longer, putting him to bed or getting him up, because she normally does it. And now I'm here. I should take some of the responsibility.
And did you even have a conversation with her?
I didn't.
And isn't that interesting? You put all that on yourself without ever even asking her if she's had the expectation that you would do that.
I know.
And so not only do we put expectations on others or have an expectation of another, we have expectations of ourselves. To be the good daughter, the good sister. And so you found the balance for you, it sounds like. You know, and who are you really serving had you been there from sunup to sundown?
Nobody. Because again, like I said, my dad didn't know the difference. And I was letting myself get too, you know, hungry, too tired, and not feeling too well, you know, just sitting there a couple times. And so I totally projected that whole situation because I have no idea what she expected or didn't expect.
And isn't it interesting how that martyr mask can just come right back?
Right back. Yeah.
And it seems to show up most often in people with family.
Right. Well, and that's because that's where I learned it. You know, it was modeled for me. My mother wore that one very, very well. And so, and a lot of that voice, that verbiage that was in my ear came from past history of either my mother or my sister in the past saying things, you know, of like, oh, you blah, 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 or a lot of finger pointing and blaming in the past, a lot of guilting and shaming in the past. So that's and when you're back in that family of origin environment, beware, people. Beware. You have to really do your work and really be prepared for that.
Right.
Because it can take you right down.
Completely. And so we talk so much about how our children are our teachers. But when we fall back into the pattern of being the child in the family, getting back to that family of origin, it's amazing how we go back. And fall into that. So I think that's another huge lesson, especially when you've been on the path for a while. Because boy, it's comfortable and easy, even though it's not, but it's where we know our place in a family.
It is interesting how when I'm back in that environment, how I can feel the two parts of myself versus when I'm not, and I'm more, you know, my, you know, evolved grown person, my adult self, versus when I go back into that, it's like that, you know, two night and day almost. What about you? Does that happen for you when you're around family of origin?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting really quick before I talk about that is how you said you see your evolved adult self, right? But it totally makes sense because how did your inner child develop?
In my family of origin,
right?
Yeah, totally.
So to be able to witness that is interesting, you know, so it sounded like you were able to like take the wider view and like,
I did
see the dance of inner child and adult self stepping in.
And I will say, just before you jump in, I
Yeah.
did finally, on the second day or the last day that I was there, I did set a boundary for myself. And I did, because I knew it. Yeah, I knew I had to drive 2 hours back to where I was staying for the airport.
Mhm.
And I just said, I'm leaving at this time, which would be before the time my dad went to bed, leaving
Yeah.
my sister, to put him to bed by
Mhm.
herself.
Yeah.
And, and she said she was okay. So, and I left.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yay,
So I did have some adult Kim step up.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's hard and challenging and it takes time. I think for me, yes. I mean, that's where, of course, I mean, I grew up as an only child. I have siblings. I found out that I have when I was 18, have siblings. So I don't have that dynamic when I'm with them because we didn't grow up together. So I'm, I guess, fortunate in that way that I can, for the most part, I don't have an inner child playing in when I'm around that side of my family in the same way that I think had we grown up together.
Sure.
So being an only child, I have the dynamic of being an only child, right? So I was the only one who was, I took on the responsibility of my mother's feelings, so for me, I grew up in a 3-generation family with my grandmother, my mom, and myself. And my mom's an only child too. So there's that dynamic as well. And when I moved out of the house, my mom and my grandmother lived together till my grandmother passed as well. So there's that. How do I say? Witnessing, right? So was able to witness also that dynamic that they had, because my relationship with my grandmother was very different than probably the relationship my mom had with her. Right? Because it's always a different dynamic with a grandparent, I feel.
Yeah.
So since my grandmother has passed, and now it's interactions with my mom, and because she's local where your father isn't,
right,
I've been able, I think, to have more opportunities to nurture my adult self when my inner child comes up when I'm around my mother, where if I only saw her every month, 2 months, 3 months, however often, I think it would be stronger in a different way, because trust me, it would roar. And it still does show up where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm 15 years old again. But because I have had multiple and ample opportunities as I've evolved, I think the dance hasn't been as dramatic. Maybe at the beginning, definitely, I had to create some boundaries to figure out where my place is, inner child, adult self, in that relationship. But I've had lots of practice because
do you still feel like
close.
You have to take care of her feelings and take care of her? Do you still feel that responsibility?
Not very often anymore. I used to. I mean, that was my role for a very, very long time. And that was really hard to let go of. It still sneaks in, of course.
Yeah.
But I also feel that our relationship has shifted so much because I did create the boundary and stopped taking that responsibility. She's soared. I mean, her growth, she is definitely much more taking responsibility of her own inner landscape as well. And she never intentionally put that burden on me. Like no parent ever intentionally does that.
Yeah.
But no, she respects my boundaries pretty well now. And I hope I respect hers as well.
Are there any expectations that she has of you or that you have of her that you're still aware of? Again, I keep saying about your mom because we're talking about the family of origin stuff. But you still see any of those?
I think they show up, but they're more subtle. Like anything, right? The more we evolve, the more subtle and sneaky they can get. I'm trying to see if I can pinpoint one. I can't grab one off the top of my head right now. I do think, potentially sometimes there's an expectation there that may not be verbalized because not wanting to put that burden on the other.
Yeah, exactly.
As well. So is there one that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head?
No. What about with your girls? Are there I could have put the expectation on my kids or my family because they didn't wish me happy birthday. Any of that kind of stuff come up for you? How do you feel around birthdays?
It has healed a lot. but of course it still will show up, but it's kind of like you, I get in that observation mode, or if the ego takes over or inner child takes over, they'll always be like, you're going to apologize for this later. I'm like, yeah, so they can see right through it, or aren't afraid to be like, that's your stuff, Mom, not mine. Yeah, right. So I think we have a dynamic now. I mean, it's not perfect. Of course, nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to call me out on my BS. When my wounded self decides to take over.
What about them? Do you see them holding expectations that differ from reality?
Sure. I mean, when you're in your 20s,
you have a lot, don't you?
Right. So I can witness their expectations, not necessarily with me, but maybe with other life stuff in general. And that's really challenging as a mom to witness, and we've talked about this before. It's like, you're creating your own suffering. There is another way.
100%.
But you can't say anything, or whenever, if I do happen to try, it's not well received because no one wants to hear that from their mom.
Yeah.
At that age, I wouldn't have wanted to either. They have to have their own journey and their own path. And so it's
the hardest thing to be quiet though. Or what do you, we talk about this all the time. What do you do with your angst over watching, if you have angst? I do when I watch my kids and know that even though I know fully that the best way for them to learn is to learn on their own.
Exactly.
And is still incredibly difficult to witness.
It is. And it's it is the journey of the warrior, right? So it's really us having to sit in that discomfort of witnessing. And then when there's a crack, to potentially give a little guidance,
you can.
I try. I have to be really careful because, as moms or parents or caregivers, we're so emotionally invested.
I know.
Right. And so we may think we're coming from a heartfelt place, but oftentimes it's very sneakily disguised as wanting to fix it and make it better. So they can read right through when I'm in that space versus the authentic space. Yeah. And I think also, the focus I tend to put on guidance is really, what's your responsibility? Where's your co-creation aspect? I don't necessarily use the co-creation word.
Yeah.
All the
what's
time,
your part in it?
But what's your part?
Yeah. What's your part?
And most of the time they both can own their part when the nervous system is back in homeostasis. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because as I was asking you that question, as I was commenting that it is incredibly difficult to witness, which, from the heart, yes, that's true. But if we're going to apply the quote from today, Dr. Shefali's wisdom quote, that again, I'm only creating my own suffering by saying that, because what do I want? I'm expecting something to be different other than what it is. Right. So they are, making their choices, or they're struggling or whatever. And I want them to do it a certain way other than the way that they're doing it.
And we want them to do it a certain way with the wisdom that we have. But we didn't have it when we were in their 20s.
Exactly. So who's creating my own suffering? Me. And I'm saying they're creating their own suffering, but I'm creating mine.
Exactly.
Because it's subtle. It is very subtle. But I have an expectation, that they become the Dalai Lama.
And that they do this wisdom, and we don't want them to suffer like we did until we figured these pieces out. Yeah,
they're going to be these spiritual warriors, and they're going to figure it out, and they're just going to be, their path is going to be smooth and straight uphill.
They're going to have the easiest mountain climb.
The easiest mountain. I mean, like, truly, if I'm being 100% honest right now, that is what I truly want. That's what I expect.
Of course we do. And and I think we can have the desire and the want, but reality is like, no.
It's not going to happen.
Nope.
But you're right, because, and sneakily it is my fixer mask, because again, I've said this so many times when we have recorded, is that what makes me feel that way is that it's making me uncomfortable.
Right.
It's to watch them. It makes me uncomfortable, and I want to do something about my discomfort.
Correct. And isn't that what drives so much of our inner child and our ego?
Totally.
but the adult self knows that pain is part of it. Discomfort is part of it. And if we try to bypass it or fix it, especially focusing on the other, it doesn't do any good.
I mean, let me just tell you, I'm where I am on my journey. And I can honestly say that I have grown a lot over the last 20 years that I have been on this path. I have grown a lot. And let me just say that I didn't get that growth from someone on the outside doing it for me.
Absolutely
someone
not.
on the outside fixing me. I didn't get to where I am because my path was easy and it was all, my mountain climb was straight uphill. It did not happen that way. I had many, even since we've been recording, I have fallen off the edge of the cliff many times into the abyss. I've had many steep mountains to climb.
Right.
And, many times of falling up and then falling back, going up, falling backwards, because that's the way life is supposed to go.
Exactly.
Like the ocean ebbs and flows, our breath ebbs and flows. Well, growth or recovery is a forward back. It's not straight up.
No.
And that's how, but yet I want my kids theirs to be straight up. It's so
clear. It's the whole, what do they call them? Snowplow parents, clear the path. So it's super easy, but what resilience do you build? What empowerment do you build? What ability to trust yourself? None.
Yeah.
And so,
and how do they feel about themselves?
Exactly.
If they can't do it on their own.
Why do you think there's, so much anxiety and worry and concern? Because they can't step into their own truth, because we take it away as parents. Not necessarily we, but just in general in society.
Yeah, me, I do. I'm guilty.
And the reality is when our adult self doesn't want to clear the path for them.
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
Right. Because we know they are only going to learn it through their own life experiences, and they're going to learn it potentially in different ways than we did. They're going to make different choices than we would, but that is their path and their journey. And
it's totally my inner child that wants to clear it, because it's my inner child that's afraid and anxious.
Right. Well, discomfort is not pleasant, especially.
I know.
I think the hardest discomfort is watching your child create suffering.
It totally is. Hardest one for me.
For me too.
For sure. It's so, but when I am, from time to time, when you just said, and I love that you said that, when I'm in my adult self and I'm in this bigger perspective space, I'm like, I can tolerate it a lot better, their discomfort. Cause then I know it's just, then I fall back into my inner child, and then I'm like afraid and blah, blah, blah.
The circle of the path, right?
Yes, I know. Well, this has been today was a long video. You could tell we haven't recorded in a while. This is longer than normal, but
so fun.
A good conversation for sure. I really, really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening today. And if you liked this video, we would love and appreciate a thumbs up or a like, and you can visit us on our Instagram page. That is growing. So you can see us over there.
Mask Off Community, find us.
Masks Off Community.
And all right. Even though you will not hear this recording for probably a month, I can't remember how far we're out. So it won't be Kim's birthday when you listen. We all are wishing you a happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.